well as Tableau Catalog. Next up, we have Tableau Pulse. This is designed to deliver deeper insights with minimal effort. It offers dynamic grouping and sorting, which automatically adjusts your data views. It also has goal tracking with metric goals that allow you to set and visualize the goals, and also has enhanced natural language query, which with enhanced ask, making it easier to interact with the data. Next up, we have Viz extensions. Now we can enhance our Tableau dashboards with custom visualizations and advanced features. You can integrate external data and specialized visuals, perform complex calculations, and also meet your specific needs. You can also build this, you can use the pre-built Viz extensions from the Viz extensions gallery, or you can also create your own using the JavaScript APIs. Next up, we have shared dimensions. So you can also use shared dimensions to create consistent and connected visualizations across multiple data sources. So by linking the dimensions across different data sets, you can build dashboards that seamlessly combine and compare related data, ensuring a cohesive analysis experience. Now, if you already are not aware of Trailhead, hands-on experience are the secret sauce of Trailhead, allowing the learners to experience the Salesforce product and learn how to use them step by step with step-by-step guidance. Sorry. So you can find lots of Trailhead and lots of hands-on challenges on Trailhead based on Tableau. So do check them out. Now let's talk about some fun stuff. So Data Plus TV is out for everyone. This is for all levels, whether you are a Tableau wizard or just new to Tableau. You can directly dive into the data and get started. We do have a starter guide that can help you if you want. Sign up, publish a viz with the hashtag Data Plus TV, and receive free access to the Data Farm Discovery Kit. And before I wrap up, here is a quick shout out to Trimforce. This flagship Salesforce event is happening from September 17th to September 19th in San Francisco. Some of the sessions are also available on Salesforce Plus, I believe. It is a must attend. If you can, please go. This is going to be my first Dreamforce event, and I am really excited for it. I hope to see some of you there. And now, without any further ado, let me introduce our guest speaker for today, Philippe Henao. He is the SVP of Automation, Visualization, and Service Enablement Team Lead at Bank of America. Felipe has wealth of experience in automation and visualization, and he's really passionate about data storytelling. Over to you, Felipe.
Hey, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, apologies there. I am too many windows at one time.
No worries. I'm
Awesome.
going to stop sharing screen.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and kick off a screen share and let me know when you're able to see it, and then I'll quickly get started here. All right. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let me quickly put these slides up on here, and all right. So, all right, a little bit about me. So before I kind of get started in that space, right, I just kind of want to open it up a little bit, right? Just give you a little factoid on myself, right? So for me, as a kid, one of my favorite toys was Legos, right? So anyone who has ever purchased a Lego set or even browsed through a Lego store understands that it may not be the cheapest hobby out there, right? Depending on the Lego set you're getting, it may be a little bit more expensive than others. As the oldest child of first generation immigrants, for me, right, growing up, purchasing a brand new Lego set with the instructions and everything wasn't something that I was actually able to do, right? My parents never were really able to do that just because they did not have the financial stability to do that. So for me, right, instead of getting those Legos with directions, I was typically given hand me down Legos, right? Could have been a box of a couple different Lego sets, different colors, right? Never really with a guide or an instruction, right? Growing up, it was very interesting for me because my brain was wired in a way where it was kind of like, hey, I don't need the guide. I'm going to figure this out on my own, right? It was almost like an incomplete puzzle, right? So naturally, my brain was just kind of developed in a way where I just fell in love with, you know, uh, kind of figuring out these puzzles and solving these problems that I didn't really have a guide for or a step-by-step solution, right? To say, hey, take it, go this way or go this or go that way, right? It was kind of just, hey, this is what it is, right? So interestingly enough, I think I would always attribute that my childhood played a big factor in where I am today and what I do today. I think a lot of it was just the way I was brought, the way my brain is kind of wired to think and process. And so it kind of has led me into this data world or this data position that I currently sit in today, right? So I work for Bank of America. I am the team lead for the visualization, automation, and rapid delivery team. I have been at Bank of America for the last 6.5 years, where I've had the privilege of essentially developing a team that focuses on process automation and rapid prototyping development. Everything from developing a fully automated ingestion process to the end state and delivering that into a UI UX solution leveraged by primarily Tableau. So the two tools that my team typically leverages for everything is Alteryx and Tableau, primarily because we deal with a lot of disparate data sources. So we have to do a lot of data transformation and wrangling to then create the output that we leverage for the UI build itself. Um, I've had the ability to learn from some incredible leaders who have thankfully allowed me the space to kind of use my love for puzzle solving, if you would, to develop tools that today are leveraged by our Bank of America research team, or they're leveraged for the quarterly business earning reviews with our C-suite executives, as well as two products that we've developed that are currently leveraged across the board of directors meetings that happen twice a year. Um, so I've had a lot of exposure and kind of been granted a lot of lead, if you would, in terms of what I've been able to design with my team by my side and where we are today and what we do. I've been in the analytics space for close to 9.5 years at this time. And so I've done a little bit of aviation industry down to the uh, bank and the financial sector like I am today. And so it's been an interesting transition for me, right? And I have kind of taken my learnings, if you would, from coming from the aviation industry into the bank. And this kind of leads me into my segue on some of the five whys, right? Essentially. So while I was working at American Airlines, I had the privilege of taking a uh, green belt certification. So essentially Six Sigma uh, certifications. And so what I was able to do is I was able to learn a lot about lean processes and efficient processes, right? And so in the world of data, I don't think efficiency it can be stressed too much. I think it is at the root of everything we do today, right? And so one of the things that I have actually always instilled since taking this certification years ago is applying the rule of the five whys. So if you've ever you know interacted or spoke to somebody who was in the engineering world or came from engineering background, you can bring up the five whys to them and I guarantee you that they're going to know what these are, right? So the five whys, the best way that I can explain this to individuals is it's the ability to answer a question with a question, right? And it doesn't have to be a sophisticated question. It could be something as simple as a why. And the power of that question truly starts to shine when it's leveraged and used the way that any greenbelt certification kind of coaches and teaches you on how to do this, right? And so for me, right, what I've always applied this to and kind of had taught my team is when we're having these conversations with our business partners or with our leadership team, when they're coming in and they're posing a question to us and they're saying, hey, I want you to build me a dashboard, or I want you to build me a solution to answer this question, right? Generally speaking, in the past, what a lot of areas have done is they just take that and kind of run with it, right? They don't ask any questions. It's almost like, hey, I've got my list of requirements and my box that I'm going to check, and I'm just going to go with that. I don't ever look outside that box. Well, what the five whys teaches you to do is ask a little bit more than just taking what they're telling you at face value. So with the five whys, the approach is I then ask, why are you asking that question? Right. And so the reason I ask that is what I've typically found is that generally by the time we're getting hit with a question, there was a question that started that question. And there was a question before that question and a question before that question. Right. And so what you end up starting to kind of understand is that when you are being asked something, it's because there are five other layers before it even got to you. And so, what it starts to do is it starts to set you up in a way that you are able to build essentially what we refer to as a scalable solution, right? And when I say scalable, I refer to it as scalable in the sense of I'm not delivering a solution that only answers one question. I'm thinking 5 or 6 steps ahead of the business and what it is that they're asking me. Because the reality is, what we deal with today is we're going to get hit with a question today. But that question, after we deliver an answer, we're immediately going to get hit with the next question, right? And maybe we could have solved for that. We could have kind of saved some time and been a little bit proactive had we just taken the time, the initial investment of saying, why are you asking me that question, or where did that question come from, right? And so it starts to take a different approach at how you really start questioning, or what type of relationship you start to build or rapport you start to build with your business partners, right? What we've found is in the last almost 7 years of doing this and taking this approach, it's been very lucrative in a sense of you start to develop this almost SME knowledge, right? Because you are not just somebody who is taking a list of requirements and running with it and just checking the boxes. You're actually probing and understanding more around what exactly are they doing with this data? What exactly are some of the questions that are being asked around these metrics or these KPIs, right? And so it starts to really create this SME knowledge amongst you as the developer and the designer. But with the business, they now start to understand, hey, I can just come to Felipe and I know that if I ask him this question, he's going to give me something that is a full, well rounded solution. I'm not just going to get a solution that answers one question and then I'm going to have to come back and ask him the next and the next and the next, right? So it starts to really kind of bring you into this more what I would refer to as a more well-rounded solution versus a singular solution, which is I think what we've seen in the past that, ultimately becomes if anybody's ever read the big book of dashboards, there is a reference that the author makes that is called a zombie dashboard. A zombie dashboard, really what it kind of boils down to is the dashboard can be amazing. It can be pretty. It can be as gorgeous and as cool and wowing as the coolest thing you've ever seen, right? But if that dashboard isn't being enhanced, or if you're not going in and you're constantly evolving that dashboard, it is referred to as a zombie dashboard, right? It is a stale dashboard, meaning the question that always gets asked is it actually being used? Because if it was being used, it would be getting enhanced or evolved, just like technology is nowadays, right? If you look at everything that we have, right, our phones get updated constantly, right? Well, it's because they're being used all the time and they're having to stay up to date with all the latest and greatest software, all the latest and greatest features, et cetera, right? The same can be said about some of the tools and the solutions we deliver, right? We want things that are going to be getting used time and time and time again, right? We don't just want to build something that answers a question for maybe 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months, right? Because then what that means is, hey, that was great. That answered the question 3 months ago, but now I have to come back in and I have to build something new for the question that I'm being posed today, right? I don't have a way of enhancing upon what I've already built or delivered. So just kind of a segue into why these five whys really start to set you in terms of your professional development and your career, really start to set you apart from the broader groups or the broader masses that are doing these types of builds. It's because it's a different way of asking questions, a different way of building rapport with your business units, and truly understanding why is it that you're asking the question you're asking, right? So again, five whys at the core of everything that we do is a big approach in terms of how my team, kind of comes in and starts to build that rapport and have that canter back and forth with our broader business units, right? Um, Additionally, what you start to do is if you kind of start thinking about it that way, right, is when you get to the why, you can start to anticipate a little bit of what is it that they want, right? So the best analogy I can give you here is it's almost like peeling back the layers on an onion, right? So if you think about the way an onion is set up, today when we get the question, right, again, that question may already be with all the layers peeled back on the onion. What we're trying to do is we're trying to ask them what other questions came before that. So let me understand the other layers that got us to this final question, right? Because typically they're trying to get back up from where they were, right? And so if you take a step back and you think about that, what you start to do is you start to deliver these solutions that truly are peeling back the layers of the onion, right? So if I come into a view, when I come in or into a dashboard and I look at something, right, I want to start at the top of the house, right? Typically speaking, in the data world, right, we always kind of get inundated and thrown a lot of data at once, right? And the entire premise of visualizations and UI UX design is we want to be told what should we be doing, right? What should our priority be? What should our focus be, right? So when you think about it that way, right, you have this initial landing zone or this initial layer, which is the top of the house, 30,000 elevation view. What is it that's happening, right? Now from there, allowing users to understand what should my focus be? Where do I need to go? What do I need to look at, right? I don't need to boil the entire ocean. I might just need to focus on one thing and it's this one thing only based off what you're showing me. Now I can select that thing or click on that, and then an action gets performed, and then I only see relevant information pertaining to that one thing that might have been going sideways. So an analogy that I like to use with a lot of people is if you think about, how was data being reported or being delivered 20, 15, 20 years ago, right? Typically speaking, I would have walked into my office, I would have sat down, I would have had a report in my inbox, I would have printed that out, I would have gotten it from the copier machine, I would have sat down with a ruler and a highlighter, and I would have gone through that to say, okay, what are my priorities for the day? By the time I got done with that, those priorities were no longer relevant because that was a stale report, right? Now, if we move forward into the newer world or the newer era we're in today with data, right? Allowing users to basically come in and view something and say, okay, no, I know exactly what I need to go look at. And in real time, as near real time as the data allows me, they can go in and they can start inspecting the things that they should be looking at, right? So it's allowing us to help them by prioritizing their day and saying, here are the things you should focus on. All these other things do not require your attention today. So again, just kind of taking that step back to say, how can I make somebody's job more efficient, more lean, right? And again, that's where these five whys start to kind of come into play, right? Additionally, thinking through how do you scale, right? How do you scale these solutions, right? And so a lot of what my team has really done is we've been able to kind of take a step in and say, hey, look, we not only will build you these amazing UI visuals and dashboards and products, we actually do have a data cap or a database architecture lens that we can put on this, right? So we'll build full-fledged data processes. And what we do in those data processes, we always think about scaling, right? Scalability. And typically, what my team has done is we build something and we rapid develop it and prototype it. We keep it in house for maybe 3 6 months, make sure it's humming as it should, as expected. And then the next thing, once we know everything is validated and the business is good with it, we take it and we give it back to the business, and the business now owns it. But the reason we build these scalable solutions is because once the business owns it, it doesn't mean that it stops evolving. No, it just means that more data is going to start to flow and start to come in. So building these scalable solutions allow you to hand something off so it's not always being owned by you. And now you have time to go and innovate, build these new solutions, and again, give back to your organization and your team, right? Because again, one of the biggest things that we've encountered here is it's kind of that we're in that world right now where it's a do more with less. And so, to really do more with less, you have to be efficient. You have to be able to scale, and you have to be able to let things come in and hand those off and let another area kind of come and pick those up and run with them. Right. So, again, just kind of taking a step back and thinking through these different approaches on how do you want to build your solutions? How do you want to build your products? Right. And who is your audience and where are they going? Um, the other piece that we typically tend to apply on anything that we build is a framework, right? So you'll see that I'm referencing in my slide here the MAD framework. So MAD is a framework that we had, I don't remember exactly where it was that I read this, but we've taken it and kind of applied it to everything we do today. MAD stands for monitor, analyze, and drill. So if you think about those three words, monitor is simply 30,000 elevation view, high level, what is happening, what is going on, what is important, what matters. A monitor view for us today is more than likely something that an executive or a leader will go into and will see. The leader might go deeper or they might not, right? But most of the times, your executives and your leaders, they don't have a lot of time to spend clicking and navigating through a dashboard, right? So building something that is, again, from the start 30,000 elevation view or 30-second elevator pitch, right? They understand what's happening and they can go back and say, hey, I know what's happening in my business and this is what it is, right? Now, A stands for analyze. So when you think about that, right, if I have a user that's coming into the same solution that my executive is, they're going to want to go a little bit deeper, right? They may come in and say, hey, my executive told me that, this I don't know, fintech spend is going crazy, it's going absurd, it's spiked, right? Why? Can we help me understand why? Well, that's where you start to go into this analyze layer where you're able to kind of dive a little bit deeper into what's happening with fintechs and really start to peel those layers of the onion back, right? That's where you start getting into the world of your filters, your action items, right? That allow you to understand what exactly is happening, what fintechs are driving this spike, right? Where are they coming from? What age generations interacting with them, right? Those sort of things where I can go in and understand a little bit more without getting too granular into the weeds. Now, we have some leaders within the company that they do like to get into the analyze layer, right? They like to dive deeper, right? So analyze is kind of that middle ground, depending on who you are and how data literate you are as well. Then you have the drill or the D in the MAD framework. Drill purely means that it is the the view that I, as a analyst, potentially want to get into because it's giving me all of the lowest level information I could possibly want to understand what exactly is happening, so that I have the power to then go back and say, "Hey, this is the fintech that affected us, right?" And it's actually not just this fintech, but it may be these three or four, and it's this age generation, and they're going out and they're interacting with it, and oh, actually, believe it or not, they're it's money transfers, right? Venmo's eating up the entire market, right? Which always does. So if you think about it that way, you can start to really understand how this framework can apply to a broader audience versus what I think traditionally we've built and delivered, which is a one solution that essentially looks the same, and you come into it and an executive's immediate stance is, okay, this is great, this looks cool, but I don't even know where to start because I'm not tech savvy, I'm not data literate. I just want you to tell me what's happening, right? So this is where we really took this framework and kind of applied it to everything we do. And primarily a lot of it is because of the audience that we have to adhere to, right? Our audience is pretty broad. Again, like I mentioned earlier, right, we have everything from board of directors all the way down to our some risk analysts that are coming in here, and they're also inspecting and trying to validate against some numbers, right? So we have a very broad spectrum of users on the products and the solutions that we're delivering today. um, so again, it is an interesting framework. If you've never heard of it, I highly encourage you to look into that framework. I think it is very valuable to anybody in the data space because it starts to kind of give you a better paradigm on how to set things up that I think it can really speak to a broad audience out there. Now, The additional piece in this is as you start to apply these five whys and you start to think about scalable solutions or anything from the MAD framework and how you're approaching your business partners and what it is that they're asking you and kind of what rapport you're building with them, what it really starts to do is it starts to drive up your demand. So I can speak for myself and my team. you know, when I first joined the bank, I was purely brought in to really help the Tableau culture within the fraud and claims space of Bank of America. And what I quickly found out is that Tableau was not being utilized the way it should be here. There were Alteryx licenses. Nobody was using it. Nobody even knew what Alteryx was. Everybody was very reliant on SQL and writing their own code and mirror my data from this database into this database so I can write SQL on top of it, right? And so what I quickly started to do was kind of run with these POVs or these point of views on building, what happens when you truly start to build these Tableau solutions, applying the five whys, right? Bringing in that MAD framework, right? Thinking through scalable solutions and really leveraging tools like Alteryx, right? I know there's other ones out there to really wrangle your data and be the powerhouse or the engine to your car, and then let Tableau actually do what it's meant to do, which is visualize your data, right? And so as we started to approach it that way, I started noticing that my demand started increasing, right? And as my demand increased, I kind of had to take a step back and say, look, I'm one individual. I can't do it all. So, fast forward a year and a half later, my leadership team basically said, hey, we're going to give you your own team. You can build it out however you want. And we just want to continue to multiply what you're doing, and we want you to do that across our entire enterprise organization. And so today we do it, my team kind of goes very horizontal across the enterprise. So we are what I would probably refer to as an internal consultant team, where we're able to actually come in and say, hey, I can build this for you. Or, hey, you come and you're knocking on my door asking me to help. We can build this for you. We can build you a solution. We can build you a data process, whichever one it is, or we can build you both. And what we'll do is we'll make sure it's humming, and we'll validate and test it, and then we'll hand it back to you for you to sustain, right? So it kind of starts to elevate your skill set, and it starts to really increase your demand so that you can start kind of coming in and start becoming that internal consultant across your team to really start to shine in a space where I feel like today, right, it's very siloed. I think today's world, we have a lot of folks that are, at least from what I've seen so far, a lot of folks that are very much, they either have a database architecture background and they can write code, or there's people that are really good at visualizations and building UI UX design, right? But I think kind of taking this stance, right, you start to kind of bring the two together and become a bridge between the gap that truly will, again, increase your demand, but I think it starts to elevate your skill set, not only technically but also strategically. Especially in the data world, I think everything nowadays is more coming into it with a more strategic lens. Really helps set you apart. Just because we know, there's tons of things out there that people are developing and designing, but what makes your visual better than my visual, right? And I think that's where we have to kind of start taking a step back and saying, how are we building these things, and are we truly building something that is a scalable solution that allows for broader audiences to look at it, or is it more of a siloed solution that only allows for one individual to look at it and answer one question that may only be important to them, and then we're forgetting about the other two or 300 individuals that sit in the organization, and what's important to them isn't necessarily always important to this one person that you deliver the answer for. So again, just kind of some food for thought. I will I will also be sharing, Rui, I can send it to you, I believe. But I want to put the link in for this article that I had where with the Data Leadership Council. So that's kind of what you have on what I have on my screen right here. Right. So it is a link to an article that I did an interview for that is out on the internet today. It is available. Again, I also highly encourage anybody that doesn't follow them on LinkedIn, follow that Data Leadership Council. There's a lot of very smart individuals out there that I think will help everybody in their data career, their data journey, and just it's really interesting to see different approaches and different thought perspectives on these types of things that I think we're all doing day in, day out. So with that, I will pause and kind of open up the floor. I don't really have anything else at this point.
Thank you so much, Felipe.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
so we do have. Okay, I'm gonna link the paste the link in the chat of the article. Oh, okay. If you have any questions, to please put them on the chat so that Philip can answer them for you.
Yeah, I think I see a couple. Let's see. I'm trying to scroll through here. Um, Sorry, I think there's questions coming in as I'm trying to scroll for what the other ones are. Uh, oh gosh, sorry. All right, I think the first one I see here is Jane. What
Yes.
about the Pareto principle or the fishbone diagram? Do you use them? So I think that's an interesting question. I think we've used Pareto charts before. I think it definitely depends on what you are trying to solve for. I will tell you, I had a leader many, many years ago that he was an avid believer of any new chart that he never heard about. He wanted to leverage that chart against every new solution we were developing, right? So Pareto charts are something we heard all the time. I will say I think Pareto charts are something that we do use them, but we use them very seldomly. I think it's a very unique instance where you would be using these Pareto charts. But again, in our instance, I could probably count on one hand how many times I've actually had to leverage them. In terms of fishbone diagram, we don't really use those. We haven't had to. So I can't really speak too much to that one. But the Pareto chart definitely resonates. Again, I think it's just it's use case. It's really dependent on the use case. I think is what are you trying to solve for? What question are you trying to answer? And I think that will kind of flush out whether or not you want to use that, right? Um, I will also tell you, we are firm believers in less is more. Sometimes simpler is better. One of the big things that we always kind of talk through, at least I do with my team, is we try to offload the cognitive load on the end user when looking at a dashboard. Reason being is not everybody is as tech savvy or data literate. So sometimes they come into something that may make sense to you or me, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it makes sense to them. And if we make things overly complicated, sometimes we lose adoption because of that. So sometimes, honestly, simple is better and simple is more. So I always kind of try to tell the team, hey, we don't have to make it be this crazy elaborate thing. If there's a very concise and simple way to answer the question, that's typically the way we're going to go with it.
Thank you so
Um,
much. I see another one from James. How do you use Alteryx with Tableau? Could you please elaborate?
Yeah, so Alteryx with Tableau. So from Alteryx is I'll use this analogy. Tableau is the pretty car. Think of Tableau as the Ferrari, but the Ferrari still has to have an engine that makes it run. Alteryx is the engine, right? So if just taking a step back and thinking about that example, right? We use Alteryx to be our complete and entire data transformation process, right? So any joining, any type of transformation or data manipulation, we try to do it all in Alteryx, right? As much as we possibly can. Then we push it out into either a hyper extract or we put it into a final table. And Tableau then either consumes it directly from the data warehouse environment or it consumes it directly from the Tableau server. And the reason we do that is what we found is if you don't have this massive SQL statement sitting inside of Tableau, your refresh time is a lot quicker, A, and B, the dashboard itself is a lot more performant. So if you think about it, right, Tableau has all of these computations that it has to do, right? And the more calculations that you have on a dashboard or on a UI, the longer it's going to take for that initial load of the dashboard. So if you ever run a performance check on your dashboard, you'll notice that it says compiling query. 9 out of 10 times your compile query is actually calculations that are having to be created as you're loading up your dashboard. So if you can prevent from having a ton of calculations in the dashboard and do them in the data and in the data transformation, you're going to gain performance back. So a perfect example is we've got this one project right now that my team's working on that our load time was sitting anywhere from 22 to 25 seconds, the initial load. We went in and started running these performance tests and started understanding, hey, this is where our time is being consumed at. And what we actually ended up doing is we went back in and kind of remodeled the data. And then by doing so, right now we've cut our load times to anywhere from 5 to 7 seconds. So we shaved almost 18 to 19 seconds off of our load time just by coming back into the data model and ripping out anywhere that we had calculations that we could do them in the data and not inside of Tableau. Now, I will say that's not to say that every calculation can be done outside of Tableau. There are some that you will still have to do in Tableau, right? But again, that's where you kind of have to take a step back and understand what can be computed outside of the UI platform versus what needs to be computed inside of the UI platform. Hopefully that helps.
We have a few more on Alteryx. So um, Calvin says, sorry, I just lost. There are a lot of questions are coming in. So how does it differ from Tableau Prep? Calvin asks.
So um, I will I will tell you right now my personal stance on it. So I've been using Alteryx for close to 9 years. We have a template. So I came up with a template that my team uses. So the reason that we tend to use Alteryx versus Tableau Prep is Alteryx allows us to connect to literally any disparate data source, right? So it is, I don't remember how many native connections exist today, but I can go out and connect to Oracle, SharePoint, Teradata. I can run Python. I can do all these different things and connect to all these disparate data warehouses and bring all my data together. Now, in terms of knowledge transfer, we have these templates that we've built, right? So when I am looking at my Alteryx workflow, right, we have kind of like a legend, right? We have certain colors that my team uses, and those colors mean something. So blue, for example, a light blue might indicate to somebody that, hey, this is an input, meaning this is somewhere that I'm sourcing data from, right? Now I have a green, which is an output. This is where the data is going or landing. These may be the staging tables, the views, etc., that it's going to. Now, in between that entire process, I've got different transformation pieces that are happening. And so I may have something in yellow, right? And yellow for us is kind of like a stoplight, if you think about it, right? Yellow is more of like a warning. That yellow for us indicates, hey, there may be opportunity to make this more efficient here, but we just don't have the bandwidth right now to do that. So we'll come back and revisit it because it's working right now, but we can make it leaner or faster in the process, right? So when you start thinking about kind of a legend and how you leverage these colors, what we've done is we've set up this paradigm where all of our workflows have the same color legend essentially applied to them. So when we take and hand things off to other business units or to other teams that we built a process for, we have all the knowledge transfer packed into the workflow itself. So we don't ever have to go in and set up a meeting and hold anybody's hand and say, hey, at this step it's doing this and this and this. We never have to do that because it's all documented inside of Alteryx. Additionally, one of my favorite things about Alteryx is when I run a workflow, it tells me exactly where it fails. Meaning, if you think about code, if I've got 900 lines of code, it's just going to give me a generic, hey, there's a comma missing somewhere. Now I have to go figure out where's that comma missing, line by line. Not with Alteryx. Alteryx has a log and it shows me in that log exactly where it failed. Now, what I can actually do is I just double click on that red indicator or the red in that log and immediately pulls me into the step in the workflow process and tells me this is where it failed. So it's a very user intuitive um, tool, if you would, and it doesn't require somebody having massive amounts of SQL knowledge to use the tool, right? It is something that is very drag and drop, and you can get very robust with it though. Don't get me wrong here. You can get very sophisticated with it, right? We actually have full-fledged apps that we build that allow us to, well, we allow some users to input something that writes back into a database that we own, right? And so you can do something like that, or you can do something as simple as just running a select star from this table and only return to me the things that meet the condition of the word client, right? And now it's just going to give me that back, right? So again, I think that those are some of the biggest differences I've seen so far with between Tableau Prep and Alteryx. The other thing that I would definitely call out is for us, we're on an enterprise box with Tableau. So if I have things running in Tableau Prep, that means I'm sharing my bandwidth with the entire enterprise that also has dashboards sitting on top of the Tableau server. So you start running into kind of a performance issue because you're demanding more resources and you might not have enough resources because your entire enterprise is also demanding more resources. So I think a lot of it too is based off how you are set up and how you're operating and the way that your company has your Tableau environment situated.
Perfect. We have one more from Stacy Rhodes. So, curious if any of you in the financial services have used Encino, and how does that compare to Tableau?
We have not.
Okay. And I see one more from Jane. Do you get involved in ETL or ELT for that matter? Uh,
Uh, yeah, so Jane, we do a lot of ETL ourselves, right? So my team owns a lot of our own ETL processes. So yes, absolutely, we are very much involved in the ETL. I think I would be doing myself a dishonor if I did not come out and tell and say this on this call, but I will be very transparent with everybody. 80% of our work is data transformation. The UI and building a visualization, that's 20% of the work, but 80% of it is making sure that your data is in a way that you can leverage it to build your UI or your end state solution. So absolutely, we do all of our ETL ourselves.
okay, I see one more from Calvin. Do you use Alteryx servers to set up schedule refreshes that pushes data directly to the Tableau server?
Yes, we do, Calvin. So we actually have a lot of, well, almost all of our workflows are set up that way where they go refresh. We again, you can get very robust in terms of how you set these up. So we have two processes that today we essentially what we have is we've got a couple of dependencies on upstream data movers, and so our process can't actually kick off until all the data is there, right? So if you have a scheduler, the schedule basically says, hey, I'm going to run at this time every 22nd of the month, right? That would be great if all of our data was available on the 22nd, but we know that in theory it's not. So what we've actually done is we do have a process today or a workflow today that basically runs on a proc. And so it has a condition, and what it does is it's basically going out on the 22nd, it starts. And what it's doing is it goes out and it's checking against a table to say, hey, are all these conditions met? Yes or no? If all the conditions are met, then it allows the rest of the workflow to move forward, meaning it's going to complete the entire run. But if the conditions aren't met, it immediately stops the workflow and then it puts the workflow back into a queue that says check again in 3 hours. And then it'll come back and check again in 3 hours, and we have it set up to where it can run for up to 3 days. But anything past that 3 day window, then my team goes in and manually does a run because we want to make sure, hey, we don't want to have this out there just eating up bandwidth indefinitely. So we always make sure we give it a buffer of up to 3 days, right? So yeah, so we definitely use that, the gallery scheduler, and to our advantage.
I see one from Kathy. Kathy, what was the name of the book that you mentioned earlier? And great presentation.
The Big Book of Dashboards. It's a great book. It's a great read. If anybody hasn't read it, I highly encourage you to. There's a lot of visualization takeaways that you can kind of leverage for that book or from that book, excuse me. It is Calvin. It's the block. I believe it's called block. And it is a macro, yes. It is a macro slash app. So the block is basically in there and says proceed or don't proceed. So yep, you're exactly correct. Um, Honestly, selfishly, because I think I've done this long enough that I think my team, uh, I'll be very candid, we're able to deliver a full-fledged solution in, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, we can turn something around in 6 weeks where if you are relying on another area to get you your data, you may be waiting longer than 6 months. And there's a lot of back and forth too, if you think about it, right? Because you're giving the data team, if you would, in this case, you're giving the data team requirements and you're waiting on them to stand everything up before you can go do anything, right? So today, I can tell you one of our projects that we're working on today, we do have a data team involved, but even though that data team is involved, we actually own the entire blueprint, right? My team owns the pen. So we take sample data, we mock up what the data structure should look like. We run it through an AlterX workflow, make sure it works and pushes out a sample data set that we then pull into Tableau. And what we actually then turn around and do is we give that blueprint back to the data team and say, hey, we tested it, we validated it, it works. Now you just need to go basically build this, right? So it's almost like we create the recipe to bake the cake. We bake the cake, we like what the cake tastes like and what it looks like, and then we just hand that back to our tech partners and say, here's the recipe to build the cake that we're looking for. Go build a cake.
I think we have one more from Calvin. Have you used the Tableau output tool to push the data to Tableau?
Yes, we do. We do, Calvin. We actually leverage that with this same project that I'm referring to right now. That's exactly what we're doing. We have an output that goes one. So it's the final step, right? And the final step creates a Tableau output. So it creates that hyper extract that pushes to the Tableau server. And then we also create a table, which is where it's kind of our fallback, right? In the event that the hyper file fails, we have a table sitting inside of Teradata that we can go pull back up and fall back on in the event that something goes sideways in the other. But yes, we definitely use that today.
Okay, we have one from JU. So, how does your team present insights to the business units? Any scalable and effective solutions from Tableau dashboard to final point presentations?
Yeah, so great question, Jerry. So for us, honestly, one of the big things that we try to do is we leverage storyboards a lot. I think storyboards are they are underutilized. I think a lot of us tend to really rely on building a dashboard and then the dashboard is going to solve the answer. I think storyboards are tools that we can leverage for business units that have a deck that they tend to look at, right? So we did do something a couple years back where when COVID kind of hit, right, we had a specific set of markets that we were looking at. And so my team did build a single dashboard that had a filter, and that filter was basically the market, right? And let's just say there's 120 markets. What we then did is we simply said, okay, now let's build a storyboard and simply change the storyboard to represent each market. So now it made it into a 120-page deck, but that deck never had to get touched. All folks were doing is they would come in and download that deck and they had their entire local market deck with all their COVID information. And each deck or each view was market specific and it had a scorecard for that market that they then looked at, right? So that tends to be our approach, right? And I think a lot of that too, though, is you have to have the buy-in and the partnership with your business units to really have them trust you when you're building these storyboards for them, right? Because in theory, the visualizations shouldn't be changing. It's just the data under the hood, and now you have an easy button for them to download or print, and then take that and show that to their broader, their broader leadership, or whoever it is that they're interacting with.
Jane asks, any improvements that you're looking to make? Generative AI tools, maybe?
So, that's always an interesting topic. I think that, as most of us in the fintech space know, I think, financial services or financial service institutions are, the risk appetite's not very large. So when we talk about AI, there's a lot to unpack in that. My personal stance on that is AI is great if your data is great. If your data is not great, AI is not going to be great for you, right? Again, to use the analogy, garbage in, garbage out. So I think, for us, a lot of it is we want to make sure our data is set up in a way where it is readily easy to consume into an AI platform that then can generate the right results. But if we don't have that ready, then the results that are going to be getting generated are not trustworthy results, right? And I think that's probably true for a lot of companies if you kind of take a step back and look at it from that perspective, because AI does not clean up your unorganized data, right? I think at the end of the day, you have to do that first in order to apply Gen AI on top of anything. Correct. That is absolutely correct, Jane. Data is very rarely, I will say data is very rarely like Tableau Superstore data. I will put that out there.
I think with that, uh, if you have any more questions, please let us know on the chat. Otherwise, I think our time is up. This was an amazing session. Thank you so much, Felipe, for sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
And I will be like we will be uploading this recording